believe it's the hump day. You know, I remember growing up in Montreal, David, listening to the boys at Shom FM saying it's the hump day. You know, so I stole this for some DJ back in the day and just never forgot the cliche. Mm-hmm. You know, we've talked about in the green room. David and I went into some memory lane. You know, as many of you know, I grew up in Montreal, Quebec, alongside guys like David. You know, one of my best friends. I would say growing up on the West Island, it was, I would say, more sheltered, more American pie from the Midwest, multicultural without any weight to being multicultural. No one really cared. You know, but I guess growing up, the big thing was discrimination against blacks. And you had discrimination against Jewry, but not as much. It didn't seem like it made the papers. This is dating to the late 70s, early 80s. And, you know, in this time, it was more, you know, the life in the world is a little bit more rosy. But Black Americans and the racism amongst the Black and African American families was, you know, front and center. All the while in the South, you had, you know, swastikas, skinheads, which ended up finding their way to Montreal, Quebec, and finding 16 stitches in the back of my skull. To today, barely even makes the paper. You know, something that I don't really understand. You know, if a governor's mansion is firebombed on the eve of a Passover Seder, no different than an Easter dinner, but for Jews, and it was AOC's house, there would be media going bananas. Hey, everybody. My name's Stuart Brisgell. That's David Solomon. And this is the Rant Network. It's a go-to unfiltered podcast that's obviously very unapologetic. We tackle a diverse range of topics with very candid conversations and always a bold opinion. Whether it's breaking down the latest headlines, exploring pop culture, or debating politics, or delving into the complexities of modern life, this covers every platform. So grab a seat, settle in, and join us on what should be another thought-provoking journey. And your voice matters, and there is nothing off limits. David, you know, I hope I didn't steal the thunder by the cliche, but, you know, I don't hear AOC's condemnation. I don't hear Nancy Pelosi, who got beaten up, her husband got beaten up, by a mental health nutcase. I don't hear Mr. Jeffries ranting and raving like a lunatic for 24 hours in a marathon talking about absolutely nothing. I don't hear anyone. I hear crickets on CNN, crickets on Bloomberg, crickets everywhere. What do you got to say?
So, you know, Stuart, I'm going to start by saying that this isn't the first time that Jews are being attacked. We know that. Jews have been attacked for centuries. I mean, this is not new. But it's become, you know, it's whitewashed. All right? It just becomes normal because it just comes every day. It's not news anymore. You know, Stuart, my synagogue was the first one to be firebombed November, December 2023. Then it was firebombed the second time. And similarly, you knew some leaders condemned it, others were cricketed. And they did, by the way, just to give you all an idea, the second firebombing that occurred earlier this year, late last fall, they arrested a 19-year-old kid, Muslim, from the east end of Montreal. He got there. It's like 75 kilometers to get from where he was to get to our synagogue to purposely damage, destroy, cause havoc. Crickets. City of Montreal, crickets. Leaders, crickets. But only certain people did respond. Now, Stuart, Passover is one of our holiest days of the year. Families get together. It's a really important day for Jews, but it's also a day that we've dealt with blood libel, where Christians, the church accused Jews of killing Christian babies and boys and girls to make the wine. That was the blood libel of Passover, way back when. And blood libel hasn't stopped. It's been consistently going on and on and on. And Passover is the time when, because we have to make the special wine, we have to make the special matzah. So the church used it as a wonderful occasion to go after Jews. Now let's fast forward to 2002. Hamas in 2002 attacks the Park Hotel in Netanya with a suicide bomber. 30 dead, 140 more injured. At a Passover Seder, a religious family, traditional, call it what you want, gathering to cause maximum damage, to cause maximum impact. What was the world's reaction? Crickets. But when Governor Shapiro's mansion in Pennsylvania was firebombed on Passover, conservatives across the board went and condemned the action. The only one who was silent for a lengthy period of time was the president of the United States. A little surprised that he didn't condemn it. And at the end, he condemned it and said the guy's probably a whack job. And according to reports, this is unfortunately an individual with mental conditions and on psychiatric medicine. But it doesn't forgive the fact that he sent messages, which, tell me if this doesn't sound familiar, where he left with a 911 operator after the attack that said that he was sending a message to Shapiro that he would, quote, not take part in his plans for what he plans to do to the Palestinian people, and that he needed to, quote, stop having my friends killed, and that, quote, our people have been put through too much by that monster. The warrant says that this guy, Cody Ballmer, placed the call at 2:50 a.m. Sunday, less than an hour after he allegedly scaled the fence, broke into the governor's mansion in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and started a fire in its southern wing with a pair of Molotov cocktails. What is the reaction from the left, Stuart? Because you and I talked about this in the green room. Well, Mika Brzezinski, the one who has the highest authority when it comes up to values working for MSDNC, she goes after Trump and says, why hasn't he reacted? Why hasn't he reacted? But does she go after any of the people you just listed, Stuart? Of course not. Does she not wonder where all, like Akeem Jeffries, Cody Booker, AOC, Bernie Sanders, who claims to be a Jew but conveniently ignores that side of his life? Where's Chuck Schumer? Where's the press conferences to condemn this? Now, instead, we're going to call it an isolated incident. We're going to call him guy a kook job, and we're just going to leave it alone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what has happened. We have whitewashed anti-Semitism. We've turned it into something that is just an everyday occurrence, and you know what? The who cares is the reaction. That's sad. And Stuart started this rant, and I'll wrap up my part of this by saying, if this were a black governor, if this were a Hispanic, a Latino, would we be reacting the same way? Or would this be on the news feeds like what happened, as you said, with Nancy Pelosi's husband being attacked with a hammer by a lunatic, a whack job? And how many days did the media run with that story? But yet it's a Jew, and it doesn't matter, Stuart.
I'm even, while you were ranting, David, I was flipping through some online searches as far as, what can I see? And if you count how many news articles have been written about this versus any other incident, you're right. It's just crickets. This 2025 attack, which thank God is nothing like the 2002 attack in Netanya, is still an attack. And the normalization that the progressive lefts have made this on Jews is quite frightening. And because there seems to be no condemnation from the radical left-wing party of the DNC, nor do you hear anything from Whoopi and The View as far as it's, you know what? And I think they do this intentionally. I think by not talking about it, causing dissensions amongst minorities is another way of causing anarchy. The clear device that the media has on creating more media is by causing more insanity. By not covering it, it causes people to say, what about, and you brought up, if it was a black man, if it was a black governor, if it was a Latino governor, Italian governor, Italian governess.
I don't think it would matter if it was some of those, because it doesn't matter, Stuart. It only matters to certain categories in America. And I'll tell you, Stuart,
100%.
Stuart, because
100%.
there's certain communities that don't want you to pay attention. They don't want you to pay attention to someone else. Only their cause matters.
But you know what's really funny, because it's going on in New York. I don't know if it made the headlines here. This whole debate over Native Americans and how the left is trying to assimilate them by removing them from every part of modern life, whether it's the Redskins. You know, the left's agenda is more nefarious today than I think the world has yet to comprehend. They want to have one religion. It's the DNC. They want to have everyone to fall rank and file, or you're not, it almost sounds reminiscent, and I hate to do this, as the extreme wing of the Catholic Church. One religion, you either capitulate or there's a holy war. And I got to tell you something. It sounds very much like the extreme side of the Muslim faith, like Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, the radical Islams. It's almost the same playbook. Repeat over and over again. And it's not even creative. It's no different than Hollywood having to regurgitate, Transformers 27 because they can't think of another movie to come up with.
But Stuart, let me
just tie it all together. The intention on not covering it is actually their guilt, because they're doing this intentionally. It's not that they're marginalizing, they're antagonizing. They're causing dissension amongst different minorities.
100%. But Stuart, in this, and to your point, Stuart, and this is what I was trying to bring you to that, is that, listen, at the end of the day, I don't care what deity they pray to. I don't care what, they believe in and whatever. America as a whole, Canada as a whole, England, France, you name it, we've let this go. We've learned nothing from history that when you let religions be attacked in this way, it leads to a complete destruction of civilization. And I'm sorry to say this, is that when you take, you don't hear Jews yelling, we have to have our own movements, and we have to create anarchy, and we have to create so that people can pay attention to us. Jews have taken care of themselves, Stuart. And you know what the sad part is? When I walk to synagogue over on the weekend to go for Passover services, and I have to see additional security in front of my building, that is what is the problem. This is how we're handling it. We're not getting rid of it. We're telling people, okay, we'll pay for more security. Okay, we'll get you more security. We'll beef up your security system. Well, beefing up my security system didn't help my synagogue get firebombed, and it didn't help Josh Shapiro's house not get burnt. And it just shows you to what extent this doesn't create outrage. No one's angry, Stuart. No one is calling for an end of anti-Semitism. How come? Yes, the president has put out these type of messages, and yes, he's trying to get that done. But for Pete's sake, Stuart, how many more occasions, how many more times we've had shootings, we've had shootings in synagogues, we've had all these things, but it's amazing to see how it doesn't matter to the Western world anymore if a Jew, especially even a governor, is attacked in this way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know how else to even reboot or say. I mean, David, you're 100% right. And you know what? On that note, it's time to wrap it up, Dave. Any last words?
Nothing to say at this point.
I agree. Look at that. Things can change. And that brings us to a close on our episode of the Rant Network. We truly appreciate you tuning in, sharing this time. Your support and engagement means everything to us as we foster an open and honest, thought-provoking conversation. Don't forget, we're here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, noon Eastern. Stay connected with us through your social media channels because, heck, they don't help us at all. And let us know your thoughts, questions, or topics. Check our wild website out that has all the full podcasts in case you just caught a snip. We've been doing lots and lots and lots of snips. We like the snips. And there you go. Your feedback makes and keeps the conversation